Curiosity. It really started with Popular Science and Popular Mechanics, those types of magazines, and moving on into other science magazines really led me down some rabbit holes I found fascinating. And my initial attraction to CERN was just the machinery, just incredible, elaborate machinery and the scope and scale of it. But it wasn't long before I began to discover somewhat of the darker, nefarious side of the agenda in the application of the science.
Always the nefarious component, isn't there? I mean, it just seems that's humankind.
Yes, indeed.
So CERN actually is French in some way for what? Organization for Nuclear Research? I would think it would start with an S, be Société Privée de Nucléaire Recherche, something, but...
Well, you certainly have a better handle on it than I do. But yes, it was originally intended to model nuclear explosions. In other words, rather than detonating bombs in the atmosphere or beneath the surface of the Earth, it was to model those explosions within the confines of a computer. And that's really the original intent for it, and built by the military-industrial complex for that purpose.
How long has it been around?
Well, it broke ground in 1954.
Wow.
I was born in 1953, so my lifetime.
I didn't know it had been around that long. I mean, it's only really popped up on our scopes over the last few years. I had no idea it had been around that long. Amazing.
Yeah, again, of course, it's been growing in its scope and scale, as I mentioned, but really it was for the purpose of modeling, but it has grown into really what I think was their original intention, and that is, as we'll get into later on, is, everybody's heard in the mainstream, not really mainstream, but alternative media, this whole concept of opening a portal and black holes and other associated things.
Are you familiar with that outfit? I can't remember who they are. The name of it. It's a famous research institute up in the east, somewhere around the East Coast. And they were trying to create this virtual black hole, and they mulled it over for a while and said, "No, we don't think it'll absorb all known reality. Go ahead, push the button." And I never heard another thing about it.
That may have been Brookhaven, or it may have been DARPA.
No, it was Brookhaven, definitely.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
So what are they doing? Just kind of get us on this on your page. What's the hadron part?
Well, that's a quantum particle, a subatomic particle, and you're looking at things that are called bosons, and hadrons are in that group, or they're in that family. And really, to put it in some context that people can wrap their head around, if you abide by the theory of the Big Bang, when the initial explosion for the creation of the universe took place, the first particles that were created in the general discussion were hadrons, bosons and hadrons. But there are particles, theoretically speaking again, that predate that in the timeline of the explosion, and those are quark gluons, and they're known as strangelets, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But the hadron is just a subatomic particle, so smaller than an atom.
Smaller than an atom. And one of the more interesting particles I thought were the gluons.
Yes.
And I thought, why did you guys name them that? It's like, because they attach themselves to other particles. Like, oh, I get it.
Yes, isn't that clever?
Yeah.
They're so smart.
Yeah.
Took a PhD to figure that one out.
Yeah, yeah. Well, all right then. So they're colliding particles. I mean, this is extraordinarily complex. It really is. They collide particles and create little, like, limited chain reactions, so they can study them and model how nuclear weaponry or I take it we're beyond fission now to something else that nobody's talking about. Just take it wherever you want to go, Anthony. We'll try to follow.
Sure. Part of what I do is to take the arcane science of physics and distill it down and translate it. I think of myself as much more along the lines of a translator of physics rather than a practitioner of it. And so in our discussion today, keep it in that frame of mind that really I'm trying to simplify things for an audience that is not exposed to these types of discussions on an everyday basis. So really what we're looking at with the Large Hadron Collider is accelerating particles, protons, again, subatomic particles, to near the speed of light for the purpose of colliding them. And they do that by circulating protons around a 27-kilometer ring in opposite directions. So picture a ring that's hollow, a tube. They call it a pipe that has particles moving near the speed of light that are moving towards each other, and then they cross over and collide. When the collision takes place, it breaks up into small fragments. And these small fragments are things like the Higgs boson, the so-called God particle, and quark gluons, which we call strangelets, and other small subatomic particles. And they study these by following the pathway or the trajectories of these particles as they spin off from this point of impact. And they generate data from that in terms of the path or the trajectories in which they measure their things called spin rate and angle of momentum and their energy. And the energy is what a lot of people are focused on, the tremendous amount of energy that is given off in these collisions. And periodically I'll stop. I'll just say I'm going to stop and let you jump in there. So go right ahead there, John.
Well, let me ask you this. How is this how are these collisions observed?
Well, they have machines that, if people have seen photographs of the Large Hadron Collider, oftentimes what you're seeing in these photographs are what are known as detectors. And these are 3 to 4 stories tall. These are massive amounts of magnetic components and detectors, cameras, if you will, that are registering the speed, the angle of momentum, the directions of these particles. And they do that much like a photographic camera, but they also do it through magnetic imaging. And also they're looking at things like the energies that are given off, which are gamma rays, X-rays. So these detectors can look at various wavelengths within the electromagnetic spectrum at the behavior of these particles. And even particles that are not observable by the detector, they can infer. In other words, they can mathematically model a particle that they cannot actually detect. But the collisions that occur within these massive machines, 4 principal machines called detectors that are connected in the stream of particles that are circulating around what is known as the main ring of the collider.
I wonder what everybody, so this goes all the way back to the 50s. And I suppose nuclear everything was all the rage back then. I wonder what the EPA would, I wonder what the French equivalent of the EPA and the Swiss EPA, a little bit of this ring spills over into Switzerland, yeah?
Yes.
I wonder what, wasn't anybody concerned about what they were doing?
You know, it's interesting. In several previous interviews that I've been fortunate to be involved in, I've made reference to the movie Ghostbusters. And there's a scene in there where the EPA representative shows up. There are other crossovers to Cern in that movie that are just ridiculous. But yeah, you got to wonder, why don't we have these various environmental agencies around the world, try to put a stop to this thing?
What do you surmise?
Well, basically, they're all in bed with each other. They all have the same agenda in mind, and to put a label on it, it's to basically they want to transform this planet. They want to change this planet into a new environment for a new race of beings, and that's part of the hidden agenda. And there's multiple layers to that.
Well, good grief! Now we're looking at an image of I don't know who that is, but he doesn't look friendly. And he's behind a pentagram, and there are lots of serpents and things. The only thing that's missing are militant cops. It's rather scary. Who are we looking at here? Or do I
Um,
know?
I, I don't see the image on the screen here, but you're referring to Cernunnos, the hunter god, I believe.
Ah, yes, behind the pentagram.
Right.
Don't tell me that's
That's
on the front of the building.
No, it's not. Shiva is on the front of the building in the form of a statue, but Cernunnos is actually where they derived the name Cern from, and this is the ancient god that was known as the hunter god. And he has, if you look at a close up, excuse me, in image number 6, Cernunnos, the horned rings, you'll see that he has a ring on each horn. And these are representative of the rings that are used with the Large Hadron Collider complex at CERN. There are actually multiple accelerators, therefore multiple rings. And he represents those rings and vice versa.
So Shiva, also known as Mahadeva, the great god, is one of the main deities of Hinduism. But why do you, I mean, we're going a little off the technical trail here, but why do you suppose they would put that personage up there?
Well, that was a
I get
gift.
it. We want to be
Yeah,
gods.
that's right. This
Mm.
was a gift from the government of India, and this does encapsulate the hidden agenda, the spiritual side of CERN. This whole project is driven by the occult, and this is a representation of 3 stages that they want to produce, the 3 stages that will take place with this machine once it's up and fully powered up. One, this is the god of destruction. It's also the god of desolation, and it is the god of rebirth. And so those are the 3 stages. They want to destroy the environment we presently live in, and then create desolation, a clean sheet of paper, and then start over, creating a new heaven on earth in their image, in their design, a new environment of their design. And that's how pathologically ridiculous this is.
So this whole thing about mad scientists is it's not just an amusement component to various Doctor Evil this and all this other stuff. These people really exist, and they really are mad, and they really are smart, and they really are doing things, and they plan to do them to us.
Yeah, I want to preface my response to that by saying that I hold no ill will towards anyone that's involved in this. I actually feel very sorry for the fact that they have been deceived. They are suffering under the grand delusion, the great deception. And this goes back to the Garden of Eden, when Satan promised Adam and Eve, everlasting life and that they would be as gods. And that's the delusion that a lot of people are suffering under, is that deception of the false promise that you'll live forever. And that spins off into transhumanism and a number of other discussions. But the idea here is that they actually believe that they have the capability to recreate life and to extend their life 500 to indefinite, and that they need a different environment, a new Garden of Eden, so to speak, to live that life. And that's a very short encapsulation. But this goes all the way back to, pre-Mesopotamia, goes back to pre-Babylonian times, back to what is often referred to as the Golden Age.
So these people are actually trying to bring about what is written in Scripture as the abomination of desolation.
Exactly. That is correct. We are seeing that playing out right now before our eyes, whether people want to believe in, Scripture or anything else biblical or not. Just simply look at the activities that are going on before us. There is this machine, the most massive machine ever created by man that we know of, certainly the most expensive, and it is not for looking for little tiny quantum particles. That's for public consumption. That's the PR office, spinning off their stories.
Well, as I like to say, the truth is unique in that it does not require any belief in it to exist.
That's
It's
right, because
just
it
the way
does
it is.
exist. It's there. The truth is right there.
All
So,
right.
when people look at a statue of Shiva or many of the other things that are occult related with this operation at CERN, I mean, whether it's their dances of symmetry that they just put out this past month, or their other occult rituals that are right out in front. If people want to, look it up online, you can see it. Why do you have the mixing of the occult spiritual with the hard science of physics? You have to probe a little deeper when you look at those two worlds being mixed together and ask, what is the real purpose of this machine?
Well, what is its real purpose?
Well, it's as I intimated here, but to elaborate a little bit further, it is essentially the destruction of what God created and the recreation in man's own eyes, man's own estimation, in his own imagination, what he thinks he can do to improve upon God's product, the product being the race of humans, but also the product being this planet and this environment. I often refer to the people that are involved as having a great attitude of hubris, hubris, hubris. They're full of themselves. They actually believe that they can accomplish this agenda of improving upon what God created.
Well, I wouldn't mind a little bit. I've never understood exactly why the human dental condition is what it is. I sort of wish the grand creator, I wish that there'd been a little bit more put into that when you consider the single tooth can absolutely kill you. But other than that, it seems to me that the universe runs pretty well. So these people are trying to they're literally trying to make themselves God. They want to literally control everything, including the reconstruction, redesign, and redeployment of what would formerly be known as the human being.
That's correct. And
Wow.
can I give you a little
What
bit
a
of
Monday.
background, a little background on another tangent?
Absolutely. Take it anywhere you want to go. We'll try and follow.
Well, as you mentioned in the introduction, that I grew up in Berkeley, and at UC Berkeley that I attended, they have a particle accelerator that you might call the small scale model of the Large Hadron Collider at CERN. The collider that they have at Berkeley sits up on top of the hill at what used to be called the Rad Lab. This is where the atomic bomb was born, was at UC Berkeley. And this is where Oppenheimer operated, Dr. Lawrence from the Lawrence Livermore Laboratory name. This is where all that started, was at UC Berkeley. They have a particle accelerator within what is known as the Advanced Light Source Building. Within that particle accelerator, one of the many, many, many experiments they operate is the Human Genome Project. The mapping of the human genome started at UC Berkeley using a particle accelerator to generate X-rays, high-powered X-rays, that they could then look at human DNA, look at the substructure, meaning the proteins of DNA, and then move beyond the proteins themselves to the quantum level and look at the actual subatomic particles that are the building blocks of all matter. The Human Genome Project itself was carried out about 10 miles from Berkeley in the East Bay, in a little city called Walnut Creek. I grew up between Walnut Creek and Berkeley in the city of Lafayette. And I was put right in the middle of all of this, right in the heart of it. So you have to ask yourself, why would you use a particle accelerator to look at human DNA? Well, take that and pick it up and transpose it over into Switzerland to the Large Hadron Collider. What Berkeley did was the proof of concept experiments on DNA reconstruction and DNA manipulation. And at CERN, and this is not talked about, but at CERN, they are actually performing the manipulation of DNA and the reconstruction of DNA from the quantum level all the way on up into a living body, a living human being, if you will. I'll stop there.
Let me ask you this, Anthony. How do you know this? Or can you say?
Can't hear you in my headset. There we go. Okay, say that again.
I say, how do you know this?
Great question. The science literature, everything that I present in my books, in my interviews, comes from the journals themselves, the science journals from Berkeley, Cornell University, et cetera, et cetera. I don't take my information off of YouTube and those other sources simply because I try to reach my own conclusions independent of other people's conclusions or ideas. And so it's a connecting of the dots. You're looking at the research that's going on and then being able to determine the endpoint application of the processes and the machinery that they're putting together. So it isn't that hard to figure it out.
Well, that sounds reasonable. It also sounds like the best way to investigate something, because we all get pulled into these little boxes, and that tends to be confining as far as free thought is concerned. You could just get pulled into other people's mind trips, and before long, it's all one mind trip. I suspect that's what's happened at Cern with these people who have been deceived into thinking that it's perfectly okay to reconstruct the universe in their image. That's odd. But, this sort of thing starts with people who say, well, it's said that man is created in God's image. But they say, au contraire, it is God who was created in man's image, and we did it. And all you have to do is just let that thing start rolling down the hill, and before long you've got yourself an entirely different mental paradigm that seems to comfort them. And so, isn't it funny with every little scientific discovery that gets bigger and bigger and bigger, there's always some flip side to that coin. Or like this old Louisiana lawyer said one time, no matter how thin you slice it, every piece of bread got two sides. And it's always a dark side where science is concerned. It's like, oh, look what we can do. And then, oh, well, if we split this atom, I think maybe we might be able to make the ultimate bomb. But, as a side note, we could also use it to boil water and spin steam turbines and create electricity for our cities. And it's like, but you really want to see that bomb go off. That's the fun part, isn't it? Well, yes, if I'm being perfectly honest, we would like to see one go off. It's just, it's just, as M.S. Mills said on Good Friday, it's in our blood. Maybe that's why the big flood came the first time, is because the DNA was corrupted. It's like, nah, I'm just going to erase this and start over. I don't know. Now, let me ask you this. How far off are they? I mean, is there any way to know how far off they are from achieving their goal?
That's an excellent question. Let's look at the physics for a moment. I follow their timetables that are produced for public consumption through their website. They are looking at September to achieve their highest level of power output from the collisions, and that will be, they say, 13 tera electron volts. It's actually capable, the machine is capable of achieving 14 tera electron volts. And we can get into the specifics of all of that if you like, but to put a timetable to it, their highest power level will be in September. They have a number of experiments that will continue from September through short of Christmas. In terms of the DNA is done. The genome project, the mapping of it was completed many years ago. But one of the things I'd like to share with the audience is the fact that we only see the tip of the iceberg of the technology that they're allowing us to see. Most of the advances in science are hidden, and they are 30 and 40 and in some cases 50 years advanced beyond what we're seeing. And so in a trickle-down fashion, we're seeing just little bits of the technology that they let us see. So when we ask a question about how far advanced are they, we can easily say 30. We could perhaps stretch that out to 50 years advanced beyond what we know that exists in the world of technology.
Yeah, I started off at 30 years. Everything that we know as being, the current level of scientific advancement and understanding is 30 years. They have things that are 30 years ahead. Then it went to 40, and now you're taking it to 50. That's probably a lot closer to it. Though my estimates were conservative.
Sure.
So I was looking at your website there. Yeah, I saw that 13 TeV in 2 weeks. So that's tera electron volt.
Yes, sir. And what they have achieved as of Sunday, there are no collisions taking place at the present time. They are doing processes that are called commissioning the beam. And that means they're just getting the machine prepared for collisions. So their estimate actually was changed as to the start of the collisions taking place because they had a short circuit that you may have heard of that took place in the latter part of March, right around the 21st of March. So their first collisions will actually, as of Sunday, they published an estimate of the end of May, early June timeframe for the collision of particles and thus achieving 13 tera electron volts as produced from those collisions.
I didn't hear about a short. What actually happened?
Yeah, there was what's called a short to ground with one of the magnets in one of the multiple sectors of the main ring. In other words, they found a small metal fragment that caused a short circuit, and they were able to clear that remotely by sending a burst of high amperage current through what they call the quadrupoles, or one of the conduits, and actually burn through, much like melting a fuse, burn through this fragment and correct the short condition. And so now they're up and running and things are just fine. That only took a matter of a couple of days to sort that out.
This is really sobering stuff. Yet another thing to sort of worry about. Isn't it funny? Every creature on Earth has something to worry about, and human beings seem to have, well, I guess in the end, it's all the same thing. It's survival of the species. So at their present rate of progress, this is sort of a difficult question. What kind of a timeline does the human being, as it's been known, have remaining?
Well, yeah. I will never claim to be a prophet.
Understood.
I will only tell you what my research has shown me, and then also what I think my intuition tells me. So the research tells me everything's pointing towards September for the big events to happen. Some people want to talk about a portal opening. I do believe that there are interdimensional portals that they are seeking to open because they have come right out in their public statements, in their press releases, saying that they are seeking to open interdimensional portals. And this is something that Dr. Stephen Hawking and some other scientists have all raised their alarm about, saying you don't want to open those portals. I'm looking at September for that taking place, September through to short of Christmas, sometime in that time frame, that we may see interdimensional portals or a portal being opened. At this point, the physics is saying that requires about 13 tera electron volts to achieve that. As far as the human race still being here, us still being alive, my own intuition derived from, because I am a Christian believer, the Holy Spirit will take care of us. He's got the plan. He's got the control. God's got this in his hands. He's allowing these things to happen, despite our concerns about it, because we have free will as given to us. And I'm not going to be a preacher nor a prophet, But I am concerned about events happening in September that may cause some significant environmental changes in this planet.
Significant environmental changes. Okay, that pretty much says it all. Let me ask you this. I'd like to run this question past you. Is it possible? Well, is it possible? Of course, anything's possible. What do you think about the possibility then that HAARP might be a portal detector?
That's an interesting question. I've not had that one posed to me before. Some people will say that HAARP is no longer operating. I believe that's a cover story. I think HAARP is still fully functional. When you look at the effects upon our weather and our magnetosphere, I believe HAARP is still fully functional. But as a portal detector, I don't think so. It's an ionospheric heater, and it also causes gravimetric effects upon the surface of the Earth and the mantle of the Earth. But we have satellites in orbit, 4 of which were launched just about a month ago into a diamond pattern in a geosynchronous position over the planet that are intended for the monitoring of black holes. We have a previous existing set of satellites that are also monitoring microscopic black holes that wink out of existence in a nanosecond of time. But these new satellites that were launched are for the purpose of monitoring for black holes being created due to the actions of the Large Hadron Collider, specifically the magnets, the superconducting magnets, and the energy, the gamma ray energy that is being generated. And that's a whole nother discussion, but to answer your question, no, I don't believe HAARP is a portal detector. I think we have satellites for that purpose.
Mm-hmm. A diamond shape. That's very interesting. Now, Hawking says black holes don't exist. Let me ask you something. Let's just talk about Steve-O for a minute. What do you make of Stephen Hawking's work? Sometimes he says something interesting, and I'll just come out of the chute with this. I think some of his propositions strike me as just rubbish, and then something else he'll say will be like, well, that's interesting and possible, but and I don't want to pick on him, but I'm not sure that I would hook my wagon to his ponies. And now he is saying that black holes do not exist. What you make of that?
Well, yeah. Actually, I did make fun of him in my first book a little bit, but you know what? He's had a change of heart. And I don't know the man personally. I don't interact with the gentleman. But I see from his statements that he's had a change of heart, much along the same lines that Einstein had a change of heart in his later years. And specifically what I'm saying is Hawking does say that black holes do exist at this point. In his previous dissertations, he would claim that they did not, that they were theoretical only. But in his later years, he has come out and said, specific to the Large Hadron Collider, that he's extremely concerned. In fact, he's convinced that this machine can create microscopic black holes, and that those black holes will then get away from us. They will lose control of these black holes. They won't be able to put them in a bottle, and that they have the potential to destroy the planet. And so he is absolutely dead set against this machine being switched on.
Mm-hmm. It's, well, yes, from phys.org. Black holes from January 30th, 2015. Wow. Black holes do not exist where space and time do not exist, says new theory. Which prompts the question, what? Where space and time do not exist, well, where space and time do not exist, nothing exists.
Yeah, again, we have to look at everything through the lens of theory. You have to put on the glasses that you look through that are called glasses of theory, mathematical theory, experiential theory. And the reason I say that is we can say the Big Bang, for example, created the universe or was the start of the universe, but we can't prove it. We can say that things like black holes exist, but we can't prove it.
Right.
We have instruments that will measure electromagnetic waves of various frequencies, but we cannot actually, beyond that, definitively say that a black hole exists. We can theorize based upon measurements, and we can look at the behavior of bodies in the cosmos, and we can theorize, but we're doing it at a distance. We are so far removed from everything else in the universe that everything is done theoretically in terms of its behavior and trying to model what is actually going on from a physics standpoint.
All right, now everybody wants to know about this one, Anthony, and that is directed energy weaponry.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I suppose that there are a lot of kinetic energy weapons. Kinetic energy weapons. There's always a multiplicity of applications for many successfully realized experiment that begins in theory and then is realized somehow. Inevitably, there's weaponry involved. I mean, just inevitably. It's ridiculous. But, General Electric, when we're not making things to help people, we make nuclear bomb triggers to harm people. It's just, it's interesting. GE, we bring good things to life. We can also bloody well end it, planet-wide.
Yeah.
What kind of data have you picked up regarding weaponry? And then we'll get back to the environmental changes that you're thinking might happen.
Sure.
Or maybe they're connected already. Is it is it an environment weapon? Yeah.
It's already connected to the environment in the sense of the behavior of our planet, and we'll get into that as part B of the statement. But part A being the directed energy weapon or the kinetic energy weapon. In the sense of defining the two, a directed energy weapon, think of a laser beam, a laser directed energy weapon, where you are exciting essentially photons, light, at certain frequencies, and you're able to direct that towards a target and heat that target and incinerate it. A kinetic energy is actually taking solid particles and accelerating them to near the speed of light, such that just their inherent momentum, their mass and their momentum, is enough to cause an explosion upon impact with another object. And this is what's happening inside the Large Hadron Collider. You have particles that are colliding with each other, and their inherent energy, their rest mass, that is increased due to their acceleration at 13 tera electron volts, for example, they're increasing what is known as their rest mass, what they weigh when they're not moving, to 13,000 times their original rest mass. So they're 13,000 times heavier in mass at the time of collision because they've been accelerated to 99.9% the speed of light. A kinetic energy weapon consists of particles moving at an accelerated rate and then impacting a target, and their own weight, their mass, causing the destruction of that target.
So to put it crudely, it's like the 5.56. It's not that it's such a big bullet. It's that the thing's moving so fast it causes damage. So you get a bunch of these particles all at 13,000 times their original
Weight.
Potential. Effectively, their potential. Right. And just smash it into something and cause its discorporation. On a molecular level, I'm pretty sure.
Yep.
Well, that sounds great. Who'll be the first one on the global block to get that one, I wonder? NATO, of course.
Well, let's go to part B, and your part B was what? What were we talking about? The environmental.
Yeah.
Okay. We are seeing changes in our environment already. Every time this machine is turned on, the superconducting magnets, one of the aspects that we can observe as to how these are affecting us is the magnetosphere and the magnetopause. These are essentially the magnetic bands of energy, the magnetic bands, the shields, if you will, that surround our planet and protect our environment from incoming energies such as gamma rays coming from the sun, coming from the rest of our galaxy. Pardon me. And it's much like in Star Trek when you hear, shields up. The magnetosphere acts as our shields. And the magnetosphere is under bombardment by the sun and other areas of the galaxy all the time. And because of that, it has a shape, and the shape changes all the time throughout the day and the night. We see changes in the shape of that magnetic pattern, or the changes in the shape of our shields, every time Cern is powered up. And as the power increases in the magnets and the power increases in these collisions that we'll see later on in May or June, you will see dramatic changes in the shape of the
We've lost his audio.
Yes, principally we're looking at the effects upon the magnetosphere and the magnetopause, which is essentially the shields around the Earth. And that's due to the magnetic shields around the Earth. And these are susceptible, these shields, to the effects of the superconducting magnets of the Large Hadron Collider. So when they power up, and certainly when they have collisions of particles, we're seeing changes in the shape of the shields around the planet. And there's the very real possibility that they will tear a hole or punch a hole in those shields. And that opens us up to the gamma ray energies and X-ray energies coming at us, not only from the sun, but from the outer galaxy. And there's another reason that they would do that deliberately, and we can get into that in a minute. But the other effects are certainly we're seeing increases in earthquakes that are occurring and activation of volcanoes when this machine is powered up. And so I can expect to see an increase of that steadily through the remainder of this year and certainly in September. Magnetosphere, earthquakes, volcanoes, that type of thing, and the weather patterns, of course, being disrupted. So if you asked me about HARP earlier, think about HARP, but multiplied many times over.
Oh, boy. Well, all right, then the other part that we could get into later, I think we probably ought to go ahead and get into it now.
What part was that?
Well, I'm thinking that are the people within this apparatus, are they convinced that it's like, no, we're not doing any of that? I mean, is there do you get the sense that some of the people who are working there that are valuable and they want to keep them are under the impression that this is not the agenda?
Sure. I think a great many of the people that work at CERN believe that they're doing good work, that it's for positive things for humanity, and that they can maintain control of anything that they have this machine undergo. And yet they've said in their own statements, even as recently as Saturday and Sunday, that we're in new territory. None of us really knows what's going to happen when we start colliding particles and achieve 13 TeV. So there are public statements that say they have some concerns, but I think that really most of the people working there, the physicists and the engineers, really believe that they're doing good things and that they can manage this, they can manage it. It's okay. It's not going to be a problem.
And I am looking at these images of these, frankly, grotesque machines. Just the very design of them looks like something out of this new little movie that's been out, Battleship. It's I don't know. I think that I think that images are important, and I don't know. This is some creepy looking. This is a creepy looking apparatus. Unbelievable.
Well, much of the design of the detectors in particular. So when people see pictures of the machine, they're usually looking at photographs taken of the detectors, and detectors when in various stages of assembly, and you can see patterns in these in the design of these machines that are carryovers from ancient Babylonian times and ancient Sumerian times, stone carvings that look identical to the detectors themselves. So this isn't stuff that we're just kind of making up out of the ether. We are replicating the Tower of Babel. We are replicating machines that existed many, many years ago, but now in a more high-tech form, so to speak. We're not using so much the spiritual as was used in the ancient times to open portals and to bring in other entities and energies into our dimension. We are now using hard science and machinery to replicate what was done in the ancient times, and that was to bring spiritual entities into our plane of existence. And that's where they're going when we talk about opening portals. They're actually, this is what they believe. The people in control of this, so to speak, they believe that they are going to bring demons, although they don't consider them to be evil demons. They consider them to be benevolent spirits that are going to come here and solve all the world's problems. This is the New Age mantra. But they truly believe that they are doing good things that are going to bring entities that have given them this information. Much of the information for the building of this machine has come from other dimensions. And this goes back to Aleister Crowley. This goes back to Jack Parsons, JPL. You can follow the rabbit holes that show the germination of the building of this machine as it replicates things from ancient times.
Other than Lucifer himself, who can we point at as the founder of this whole feast? Is there any one person?
Well, I think you can't say any one person, but certainly you can look at the occult organizations as being the core germinators and sponsors of this type of movement towards building this machine for the purpose of opening portals and communicating with beings in another realm. And so it's really all occult driven. I'm not saying that the scientists and physicists necessarily are practitioners of the occult, because I don't want to defame their character, but those that are funding this and pushing the agenda and who know what the real purpose is for this from a spiritual and occult standpoint, they're the ones, the occult organizations, they are the ones that are pushing this whole thing. The ancients had knowledge that we have lost, but has been carried on through generations by secret societies. And people want to trivialize that notion of secret societies and say that it's just made up, it's conspiracy theory. These are knowledges and technologies that have been carried on from the pre-flood date. And in the Bible, in Scripture, and in other writings, there's the discussion of the 7 fallen angels or the 200 fallen angels. But in principle, 7 primary angels having imparted knowledge to mankind. And you don't necessarily have to say these are aliens or, people in spaceships or anything of that nature. Simply looking at it as entities from another realm communicating with people here in this realm and passing on information on how to connect the two realms. So a tangible example is Nikola Tesla. Nikola Tesla admitted that in his later years, he went to the dark side. He said all along, from the beginnings of his research to the end of his life, that he was given information, that he was channeling, he was communicating, he was getting information from another realm, from another dimension. And it came to him so fast, he could hardly capture the information in writing fast enough because he was given this information. The technology that Tesla had is now in a much larger manifestation at Cern. What we are seeing are the incorporations and increases and elaborations of what Nikola Tesla was working on. It's not just Einstein carried forward, it's Tesla technology. And I'll stop there.
His earthquake machine was real. the Philadelphia experiment did happen. All that weird stuff that happened up at Montauk, that's all real.
Yep.
It's not
Yep.
it's not science fiction. It's real. It really happened, didn't it?
It did. Absolutely, it has been. And again, I take things from the physics journals and I look at what they have been able to achieve with genetics, with hard physics of particle science, and looking at what they're able to do in terms of time distortion. They have done all the things that we consider to be science fiction. And again, a lot of it is hidden from us, and it's years in advance.
You know, we've been struggling with our systems. Have you had to struggle with your systems when you bring this information forward? I'm guessing that you have.
Every time.
Every time.
Yep.
I mean, we see things down here happening on our computers and on our phones. I've never even heard of some of this. I've never heard of this stuff happening to anybody. It's like something that some really good screenwriter in a really lucid moment decided to put this stuff out, and it's like, wow. And it happens so often. I mean, there's no point in journaling because that's all I'd be doing is journaling.
Sure.
Because so much of it happens, I forget about it. I've just sort of accepted it as part of the deal, you know?
It is. It is. You know, and I want to say one thing personally, that I am not fearful for myself. I know that the Holy Spirit lives within me. I put on the full armor of God. I'm not looking for a fight. I don't want to engage with anyone in a negative sense. But I know that God walks with me, and so I just move forward. I do what he wants me to do, and that's all I can do. I just day to day do whatever it is the Lord leads me to do and what he wants me to say and who he wants me to talk to.
Well, I'll tell you, our parents may not have been the same, and we may not be genetically related to each other, but I can tell you this, I consider you to be a brother, and I'm right there with you on the very same page. This is our mission. This is not our job. This is our mission. It is our purpose. And it is so, I don't know, it helps, I don't even want to say strengthen the faith. It validates the faith, my faith, your faith, that so many people want this, and they want to know, and they want to serve. And I've been saying this a lot lately. It's like we're not here to freelance and do whatever we want and serve men. We're here to serve the Creator of the universe and the Creator of ourselves. And the moment that we began to forget this and decide that it's all about us, it's all about what we can do, it's all about self-aggrandizement, it's all about taking what we want. We don't ask for it, we just take it, and we take it by whatever means necessary. And we become creatures of avarice, meaning we're willing to screw over people to get what we think that we want as part of our personal manifest destiny. Look around you. Look at what has happened when we decide to serve ourselves. Do you get the sense that we are not worth serving? But perhaps our Creator is the one that is worth serving. And I'll stop. I don't want this to turn into a sermon, and even though it probably has.
Amen, brother. No, I'm right there with you. I'm right there with you. And I try to keep somewhat of a sense of humor about this extremely serious subject, because I like to say that God has a great sense of humor. He created everything, including a sense of humor. And I tend to think that, yeah, this is a serious situation we have with us, but, you know, God's in control, and he's just kind of standing there smiling and going, okay, I'll let you guys go on for a little while with this, but I really have my finger on things, so don't think you're the one that's really going to, you know, be able to carry this thing forward. It may end. You know, this machine is very fragile, extremely fragile, very susceptible to little things like a piece of metal shutting it down.
Yeah.
So it's not beyond the realm of my imagination that even before September, God will shut this whole thing down. There'll be an intervention, and we'll move on to something else.
You know, he also invented conflict. And I personally think that Father likes a good fight. Show me something. Wasn't he who said, be either hot or cold? But if you were neither, I will spit you out of my mouth like you were never there.
That's right.
And I think
That's
it's just
right.
I think it's just about to be game time. You know, I think
Yep.
kind of
I think his big purpose with this machine and letting it go on this agenda like this so far is for people to choose their sides. It's black or white. You have two choices, two directions in life. And I don't want to be preaching, but it's just, I think it's like, okay, guys, you're going to pick what side you're going to be on, and then we're going to have we're going to have this little game.
And there'll be no standing on the sidelines.
No.
All the way in or all the way out. What's it going to be?
That's right.
I'll tell you what, man. Doesn't it make you feel alive to know this?
Mm-hmm. That sure does. I'll tell you what, the last 3.5 years that I've been writing, and it was like a light switch thrown in my head to start writing. I was not a writer before this, but all of a sudden, he threw a switch in my head, and I physically felt the transformation in my mind to start writing. And I'm not saying that, again, I'm not a prophet or writing scripture, but I feel more alive these last 3.5 years doing this writing and now doing this speaking and getting his message out than I have ever felt in my entire life. And this isn't about me. It's not about attention being drawn to me. I'm talking about getting the message out to people is what energizes me.
I can't believe the words that I'm hearing come out of your mouth. I'm not going to say another thing about them. I'm really not, because I'll tell you, you really are a man after my own heart. You really are. It's unbelievable. How far along, this may not be we may be going off subject a little bit here, but how far along you reckon this whole transhumanism thing is at this point? Is that also 50 years beyond what we think? We know they're putting crocodile beaks, this is 2 years ago at least, putting crocodile beaks on little baby chicks and all kinds of, cross-pollination, shall we say, of these various life forms.
Well, let's define transhumanism as I see it, first of all, and that's the merging of man and machine. I think when you're talking about putting, beaks on birds and, other mixing of DNA, we're talking about chimera. We're talking about animal-human hybrids. There are hybrids already that have been created in the United Kingdom. There have been many, many articles about chimera already being created. And then we move on to human hybrids. These are not necessarily clones. These are actually hybrids that are grown from artificial DNA. Going back to the discussion about Berkeley and the, looking at the proteins of DNA using a particle accelerator, they're able and have already manipulated at the quantum level the quantum particles that are then used to create atoms, to create molecules, to create proteins, to then grow artificial DNA. It's my conclusion that there are literally thousands of hybrids that have been grown, that are in hibernation, that are in laboratories. People want to talk about Dulce, New Mexico, and things like that. That's fine. I'm just saying from the science standpoint, there already are human hybrids that are in hibernation. And these are awaiting the, if you will, the demonic possession. Entities coming from another dimension through the portal to inhabit these human hybrid bodies that are in a dormant state at this point. That's Satan's army that he's trying to build. Satan wants to build an army to fight God, to kill God. And this sounds really ridiculous to even be talking along this line of thinking. But this is truly what they have achieved through the Genome Project, the Human Genome Project, and now the Human Mind Brain Initiative of mapping the brain. Now to go to transhumanism, we're talking about imparting your consciousness and your thoughts, who you are, into a computer. That's already been done. And that goes into the next discussion, and that's artificial intelligence, a computer that's artificially intelligent. And I'm going to stop in just a second, but I'm going to throw something at you that is called a computer that is called the adiabatic quantum computer. The model 2048, it came out this year, is artificially intelligent. And I'll stop right there.
No, don't stop.
Okay.
Don't stop.
There's so much going on. If you look at my website and you look at the topics that are covered in my books, it's ridiculous. There's so much going on. But transhumanism and artificial intelligence, you look at the Johnny Depp Depp movie, Transcendence.
Yeah.
That gives you a sense of what I'm talking about here. In my books, I talk about the adiabatic quantum computer quite a bit. And this is a computer in its present form that has the equivalent processing power of 7 billion human brains. It also is artificially intelligent. This is the mechanism by which they control Cern. When they open the portal, it'll be used for that purpose. It is also the computer that will run the Mark of the Beast system. It is the system that will control all human beings that survive through electromagnetic connection through satellites and cell sites. Will be able to control people's DNA through nanotechnology. We have nanoparticles in our bodies already. Those will be activated. A switch will be thrown. The computer, the adiabatic quantum computer, will control this entire system and control every person on the planet through that system.
And I think we're breathing in the metallic nanoparticles through the chemtrails. Is that possible?
Absolutely. Absolutely,
you just said absolutely. I was about to say, is that too much of a stretch? And you said absolutely. Wow.
Yeah. No, it's confirmed. And they are designed to be activated by electromagnetic energy, specifically microwaves, that will be projected around the globe from geosynchronous satellites that are already in place. That's an extension of HARP.
What is the most powerful force in the universe?
Other than God?
Yes.
From a physics standpoint, again, it's theoretical, but from what I have read from the journals, the most powerful explosive substance in the known universe are strangelets, the quark-gluon condensate that is produced within the Large Hadron Collider, specifically within the ALICE detector. And this explosive has three characteristics. One, it's explosive. The other is that it is what I call the cousin to the black hole, in the sense that it behaves much like a black hole. It attracts other matter to it. And it is also extremely dense like a black hole and has the characteristic of falling through the floor of the detector, the ALICE detector, through the planet, residing in the core of the planet. These are already there. They were produced at Brookhaven Lab, published in August of last year. Brookhaven announced that in April of last year they produced strangelets. They are at the core of the planet. They are affecting the planet in the form of earthquakes and volcanoes. And the Large Hadron Collider will produce many more strangelets than were produced at New York's Brookhaven Laboratory with the RHIC. So that's in a nutshell. Go ahead.
Well, you know, Anthony, I just can't help it. But going back to what you said, yes, as far as the most powerful physical force in the universe, that has to be it. Or it'll do until the next discovery, right?
This is what they're actually after. Because, as I said at the beginning of our conversation, at the time of the Big Bang, strangelets were the next thing to be produced, the quark-gluon condensate. The next thing to be produced was the Higgs boson, the God particle. So if you look at it much like drilling down, like we talk about in computers, they drilled down up until the end of 2012 when they shut down the collider. They drilled down deep enough into the quantum level to find the Higgs boson. Now they're going to drill deeper beyond the Higgs boson to production of more and more of these strangelet particles. And you have to ask the question, why? If it's so explosive and so unstable and it has the potential to convert the planet into a neutron star, why? So I'll throw it to you. What do you think?
I think maybe they're compelled toward destruction, somehow believing that they're going to survive it in a different form.
Exactly. You hit it right on the head. Again, it goes back to the hubris, being full of themselves. They actually believe that they will be able to control what's going on, utilize the characteristics of strangelets and other particles that they produce and the energies that they produce, all for a positive outcome, for a new race of beings in the transhumanism discussion and in changing the environment, which will, in their mind, revert everything back to, in the New Age way of looking at things, back to the Golden Age that predated what we know as our written history.
Yeah. Well, the Creator can unwind your helix, change things around a little bit, and then wind it back up.
Oh, yeah.
So the most powerful thing that we have individually is the little piece of God in each one of us. A direct communication with the Creator. Somebody spoke to somebody who had died, and I don't remember who it was who died, or who he spoke to. But the message was, you might remember this one. He said, so-and-so, whoever it was, I wish I could remember. I'll bring it up in a future show if I remember who it was. He said, it's not as hard as you think. And what I'm thinking is when you see how your life can change just like that, just instantly, like that switcher you spoke of that went off in your head, and you had not been a writer before, but you physically felt the switch go click, and there you were on your mission right then at that moment. That is the most powerful force that we all walk around with in this life, is a direct connection to our Creator. Somebody said one time, you want to make God laugh? Tell him your plans. You might get a giggle out of him on that.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And
Exactly.
the reason that I'm going this way, Anthony, is I'm thinking, okay, you have this huge cadre of people who want to go this one way. They've made a conscious decision to oppose. I mean, there are the willing dupes that are just in it for they like the work and they like the paycheck, and it's fun to be involved in this, and it's really hot technology, that thing. They love it.
Sure.
Okay, that's fine. But the ones who are running it have made a conscious decision that it's like, we can take him on. We can take God on. And we're going to, because we believe that we have an equally powerful force that can make us gods, going back to that hubris thing.
Yes, well said.
So
that's it exactly.
So where is our organization? Where is our Cern? Where is the group of where's the rebel force, so to speak, going back to Star Wars? I think maybe individually we are each members of the rebel force. Which side are you going to work with?
Again, agree with you completely on that. It's within our heart. We are the rebel force within our heart. Without an organization, without a structure, if you have placed yourself in a position to make that choice to go with God in your own relationship, however that manifests between you and the Creator, or you choose to go towards the God of destruction, be it Shiva, be it Satan, Lucifer, you make that choice, but there's only two directions to go.
Genetic modification and third strand DNA and nano gold and the Large Hadron Collider.
Yes, sir. Well, that goes back to Berkeley, and I would like people to realize that a lot of the laboratories that have particle accelerators are what I call proof of concept machines. They're conducting experiments across a broad spectrum of physics, but also medicine. And all of that information, those proofs that come out of the experiments at the other laboratories, are all funneled to Cern. And Cern takes in all of that information, those proofs, and they apply it in the technology that resides at Cern. The third strand of DNA, to define that, the third strand, because we only are composed of two, the third is an artificial strand of DNA that is constructed for the purpose of imparting digital information into the DNA to cause the DNA to grow into a different type of person and also to control that different type of person. The third strand is coated with a nano-thin coating of gold, which readily takes on the digital information that's imparted on it. And this is then connected, as I said earlier, to the artificially intelligent adiabatic quantum computer Model 2048. And so it's a creation of a new being and the controlling of that new being utilizing a third strand of DNA.
You know, I'm inclined to say, why don't you just talk about whatever you want? Why don't I just stay out of it and you just talk? This is extraordinary stuff.
It really helps me to work off of your questions because I have so much that I could talk about. It isn't fair to the audience because I could go down multiple rabbit holes and it would just, as my friends in Scotland that I interviewed with last week, they have when we talk about here in the States our mind being blown, they talk about their brains falling out of their skull and using a bucket to scoop them back up.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me ask you this. The ET component, it's undeniable at this point. These machines they fly around in, these little light orbs and these rods and everything else, you know, just like Wilbur Allen up in D.C. at UFO D.C.
Yeah.
He's been photographing these things. He's had his camera attacked by these little light task orbs and so forth. Mm-hmm. Has anyone suggested that, any visitations, any regularity of visitations? I mean, is it, in some circles, do you get the sense that it's a foregone and accepted conclusion that, yeah, they're in regular communication with us?
Yes. You know, I don't tend to go towards the grays or any of that sort of direction, but what I do focus upon, because I take my cues from Scripture, is that we are interacting with people that talk about abductions or they talk about physical interactions with spacecraft or orbs or energies or even beings. We're seeing really what you can just easily classify as demons, just to make it easy to talk about. But these are other life forms in the sense of energy and spiritual life forms that are coming through individually into our realm of existence, but only on a temporary basis. Many times they're invited by people to come into our realm. But when you see these orbs, a lot of times that's nothing more than a physical representation or manifestation of a spiritual entity. They are also, when we see UFOs, these are man-made spacecraft on many occasions. Again, our advanced technologies that we're seeing in our own skies, our own, triangular-shaped craft and that sort of thing. But a lot of times we're also seeing what people would call extraterrestrial, but these are interdimensional physical craft that are being used by physical beings to come into our realm of existence. So to talk about nuts and bolts spacecraft, yes, they do exist. Some are made by us. Some are coming to us interdimensionally. So why do you need a big machine like the Collider to open a portal? Well, you need that to be able to bring everybody through on a permanent basis with not just one-way but two-way communication between the realms. So you're looking at a freeway, if you will, in the terms of a Large Hadron Collider, for spiritual entities to come in and out of our realm of existence. So I don't discount any of the UFO activity that's going on, only to say that some of it is stretched out into the realm of imagination. But people are definitely interacting with spiritual beings.
Who oversees CERN, or is it just autonomous? It seems like they can do whatever they want.
Well, in the sense of a structure, a human structure, we're looking at the greater military-industrial complex. Again, the machine was built to model nuclear explosions and the building of nuclear warheads. But these are run by a group that you can call the United Nations. But it's even further beyond the United Nations, because that's just a public relations entity. The UN really has nothing other than a public relations function. But it's behind the scenes in terms of the secret societies that are actually running all of this, and they control the funding. If you control the money, they always talk about follow the money. Whoever's in control of the funding of CERN is who's in control of it. And so it's really those groups that control the money that are pushing the agenda at CERN.
Isn't it amazing? People will say, "Oh, this stuff can't be going on," because it would get out. People would find out about it. The news media would cover it. No. When's the last time anybody saw the so-called mainstream news media cover anything of any real significance? Seriously.
Yeah, that's an excellent statement. I've had many people communicate with me saying, why aren't we seeing it in mainstream media, and why have I not ever heard of CERN? I mean, it amazes me how many people that write to me and say, I'm glad you're doing this because I've never even heard of CERN. What is it? That shows you the level of purposeful cover-up and omission by the mainstream media on anything that's going on with CERN, other than the God particle that they want to talk about.
Folks, the thing to remember is that it's really true. The best stereo gear, the best automobiles, the best, the technologically the best stuff. Never heard of it before. Unless you get into some, specialists audiophile publication that only a few people even know about, and they really just put it out because they can. They're not even trying to get a paycheck out of it. Not really. You'll never hear of this stuff. You have your 500-watt receivers, and I don't even think they use receivers anymore. I do. I like them. But, and yet, this one over here puts out 35 watts, and it's $10,000. You've never heard of the brand before, and if you were to turn it on and crank it up to, say, 6, and then tell people how many watts it's putting out, it's still using vacuum tubes, you would stand there quite amused and self-satisfied as you watch them shut the bleep up about it, because it's only 35 watts, and it's about to cause an earthquake in your neighborhood. And that's what I'm talking about. These cars, we know our Camaros and our Mustangs and this and that, maybe even a Bugatti here and there. But there's stuff being made out there. I've never heard of it until I hear about it. And you've never heard of it until you hear about it, maybe just by happenstance. So there's stuff out there that exists that is so beyond anything that we think of as even available, and it is available, including information, which is the most valuable thing that we have and can get hold of. When you have information, as Anthony's quite a Prisoner fan as well. And he even said it changed his head. It certainly changed mine too, but that's it. That's what they wanted. That's why McGowan was such a genius, because information is what it is. Information is just, it's one thing. Knowledge is one thing. But the third level of that is wisdom. And that is the judicious application of information, which becomes knowledge, which then becomes wisdom. It's a 3-tiered deal, at least. And then I suppose that there's the fourth level, which is the spiritual level, which is where the best information comes from. You can't prove it. You just know that you can only prove it by its tangible manifestations in its effects that are visible. It's, anyway, boy, did I ever digress or divert or something.
No, that's a great way to encapsulate it. Absolutely. I agree with you. And it's interesting. I never got into this, this depth of physics until about almost 4 years ago. And I really started down this trail of studying physics deeply. And I don't know where that came from, other than to say that it was something that God imparted on me to do and compelled me to do. And it is, some people have accused me of being obsessed with this. Well, rightfully so. But I think in a positive and healthy way, because it isn't for me. I'm not making money off this. This is because he's put me on a mission, and he's put you on a mission, and we're just doing what we're being told to do. It's as simple as that.
This may be a little pedestrian for some, although, and perhaps it'll seem on its surface not to be cogent to the discussion at hand, but went down to Austin to the Circuit of the Americas to watch the Red Bull MotoGP. Just something different. Let's just go down there and watch these guys do their thing. And I passed this billboard, and it said some 4 initials, CCHR.org/military. And I just looked it up at first chance I that I got next to a terminal. And I just want to toss this out there. Veteran suicide, let's see, where is it? A month later came an even more sobering statistic from the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. Veteran suicide was running at 22 a day, about 8,000 a year. The situation became so dire, the U.S. Secretary of Defense called suicide in the military an epidemic. But this is what's really interesting, and that is that I've got their website up right now, and I'm looking at it. Oh, here we go. Some have claimed that this spate of self-harm is because of the stresses of war, but the facts reveal that 85% of military suicides have not seen combat, and 52% never even deployed. And I'm thinking to myself, why would they want to do this to the military? It's to take that game piece off the table so they cannot be of any aid to the citizenry whatsoever. That's my theory, and for the moment I'm sticking with it. What do you think about that, Anthony? Is that what they're doing, like dumbing down all the systems so that we're virtually helpless when this new agenda is rolled out, visible for all to see?
Agreed. And I totally agree with you. Having spent time in the military, I understand, code of conduct. I understand about indoctrination for the purpose of the mission, things like that. These guys, my heart bleeds for these guys. Many of them are being told to do things that are against their own core values, that they've been raised to be good people. They believed in being patriotic. They believed in their country, that they thought they were doing something that was good. And then they are faced with orders to do other than that, to do counter to that. And we've seen high-ranking officials, generals all the way down, who've been given the choice. Are you going to order your troops to shoot on Americans, on citizens? And are you going to abide by those orders? And they have said, no, I'm not going to abide, and they've been run out of the military. And that goes all the way down the ranks. I've talked to soldiers that have recently left the military, and that's what they're facing. And they're in a no-win situation. They're under the UCMJ, Uniform Code of Military Justice, and they have to take orders or they go to jail. And so they choose the other way out. Rather than take those orders, they're killing themselves because they don't see any other way out than that.
This is extraordinary, and again, this may be we may be going a little far afield here, but everyone from Robert Kennedy Jr. to Dr. Oz are Dr. Oz is condemning glyphosate, which attaches to any metal in your body, condemning Monsanto. Robert Kennedy Jr., Robert Kennedy's son, is condemning the use of vaccines. They can put absolutely anything in them, and they're not accountable in any way. And one of the worrisome components in the vaccines is mercury. So that's more metal going into the human being system. This really is all about being able to operate us by remote control, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And from my medical background, even as a paramedic, I understand some of the things about genetics. And it's clearly evident. I put out a video that in January of 2013 against vaccines. And it principally goes back to the third strand of DNA as being a component of vaccines. One of the agendas that I put out is that they will create a pandemic, much like we saw with Ebola and MERS coronavirus and some others. They will put out a pandemic in which people will be so scared about this disease that they will demand a vaccine so that they don't contract this horrible disease that is now at pandemic level. And by demanding the vaccine, they will then be taking on a third strand of DNA as a component of the vaccine and then subject to the control by whoever wants to control them. So I'm adamantly opposed to any vaccines at this point. And the mercury is a stabilizer. It's a preservative, and it's a substrate. It isn't necessary other than, quote, for the preservation of the vaccine for an extended shelf life. But the mercury obviously is a neurotoxin, and it is extremely toxic to the human system. And there's no bona fide reason for it other than to harm people. But I'm totally against any vaccine of any form at this time.
Yeah, I'll risk the measles. I'll take a day off. I could use one.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm looking at your website. It's a nice looking site, and,
Thanks.
and there's a program that you can hear on audio. Anthony Patch, Cern, Saturn, and Jacob's Ladder.
Oh gosh,
Jacob's Ladder. Now, there's a term that keeps coming up and coming up and coming up. You want to talk just a little bit about Jacob's Ladder?
Yes, indeed.
Excellent.
We're covering a lot of ground here today. It's very interesting. Jacob's Ladder is. I'm going to kind of work backwards. Jacob's Ladder is in the world of physics what are known as Birkeland currents. If you ascribe to the theory of the electric universe as opposed to the gravitational universe, which is Einstein's model, Birkeland currents are plasma currents that exist in the cosmos. Electrical plasma that is interacting and connecting heavenly bodies, planets, suns, asteroids, etc. And the Jacob's Ladder is a construct of plasma, Birkeland currents. The Jacob's Ladder will be, and I'm shortening this way down because we're limited on time, Jacob's Ladder will be established as Birkeland currents, a plasma conduit is what I call it, that will be generated by the Large Hadron Collider, projecting a plasma connection between Earth and the southern pole of Saturn. Saturn, in the Golden Age, if you will, in pre-Mesopotamia, pre-flood. Are you still there?
Absolutely.
Did I lose you again?
Nope.
Okay. Saturn was in closer proximity to the Earth in the sense that it actually blotted out most of the sun. It was so close to us. And you could only see the rim of the sun around Saturn. And there was an electrical plasma connection between Saturn and Earth. Now the planets are in different positions and in different orbits. And they wish, I say they, those that the occult societies that worship Saturn, want to reconnect physically the Earth with Saturn using a plasma conduit of Birkeland currents in the scripture known as Jacob's Ladder. The purpose of that is to bring the entities through the portal by connecting to Saturn. Saturn is the repository of these entities in order to allow the entities to leave Saturn, which is why Saturn's been worshipped, is because of the demonic entities that reside there. They want to bring them back to Earth physically by way of this plasma conduit connecting to the portal, and the entities will then descend 300 feet below the Earth to the laboratories at Cern. That's why Cern is below ground. Cernunnos, the god, he is the god of the underworld. That's why Cern is underground, is because that's where they want to have the entities reside when they come to Earth from Saturn. That sounds totally bizarre. This is what they believe. This is not what I believe. I'm simply the messenger carrying forth what the occult believe to be fact. I didn't make this up. This is what they have as their theory and their practice and their belief. And I'll stop there.
That photograph of Saturn looks like it's, there seems to be this recurring theme of the eyeball.
Yes.
You know what I mean? I was
Yep.
just looking at an image a while ago, and it looks like this big eyeball, and then we went back to the prisoner a while ago with the all-seeing eyeball. I mean, I'm looking at this thing. There's a big crowd of people there. What is this I'm looking at, Anthony? Is it a top view? It's like a blue center, and there's a gold iris in the middle, and all these people down on the floor. They look like they're having a good time.
Yeah, that's image 22, I think you're looking at. People in the detector in the chamber of the CMS. That's one of the principal detectors, and CMS is one of the detectors. They are 300 feet below ground in one of the chambers that holds that detector. And so I'm trying to give some, the viewers, the audience, some sense of the scale of the machine. And that is where the beam passes right through the center of that detector, and it comes into the detector from two different directions. The particles collide within the core of that massive machine, and all of those things in red that are around the circle of the center are the actual detectors themselves that are registering the energies and trajectories and the spins of the particles resulting from the collision.
I'm tempted to make a T-shirt out of that image, and with the question, anybody want any of this?
That's right.
Oh my gosh. Anthony, I know that your time with us is limited because you're a busy man with a schedule to keep. What would you like to leave with everybody? And I assure you, we will implore you to return to Caravan to Midnight in the near future.
Oh, I'm honored to come back and speak with you and visit with you again, John. It's been a pleasure. We've covered some ground that I've not covered in other interviews, and I greatly appreciate the variety. I'd like to leave people with just the sense of knowing that our Creator's in control, to not be fearful. Please, this is not fear-mongering. Please do not be fearful of this machine and what is happening and what is coming. I won't preach to you. I just tell you what I've done. I turned to God. I accepted Christ as my Savior. The Holy Spirit resides within me. That gives me the strength and the knowledge to continue on with the mission and to not be afraid. Thank you.